Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I will be showing you the latest things that I've done on my project of adapting the fighting fantasy rules to a Twine game and using the Sword and Planet subgenre of science fiction for the plot and setting. But before I get into that, I should mention that I've made a small change to the files that I save on itch.io, which are linked to in the description of every video. Because the files we're getting more and more, and they're quite big, they're a little bit over 70 meg now, I've split them up, and I've got the old files in one download, and I've got just the Fighting Fantasy project in a separate download. And so if you want to keep up with it and download the latest sort of version of the code, you only have to download the one project, not all of the previous stuff. So that will be a little bit quicker. Anyway, let's look at the game. Here we are at the start of the game. It's so far nothing different from what we would have seen in the last video. However, and if you stay hidden, then it's still the same sorry, haven't done anything yet message. But if we go back, if you reveal yourself, there's quite a bit more. So it's all still in that note form. Everything's in a bracket, which is my little code for myself to tell me that I still haven't written the exact wording, and I need to sort of expand it once I've finalised the structure. But you can see that you have quite a few. I see that I've made a mistake there. I've got a bracket and no end bracket, which isn't a error. It won't generate an error because this is all just text anyway, so I can use whatever characters I want, and the bracket format isn't anything to do with Twine's language. It's just my little decision to put things in brackets if I haven't finished. But it is still a mistake, so I'll try and fix that as soon as possible. But you can see that you can make a few more decisions before you get to the section hasn't been written yet. So I've written a little bit more. It's all to do with that one section of the story where you stay with the sort of alien hunter-gatherers, who I haven't yet come up with a name for. And as a result of that, we also have more types of paragraph. We have you probably noticed that we were testing our luck and testing our skill, rolling against stamina, and there's some others as well. So that's what I want to spend the rest of the video showing you. So here we are in the code. Let's zoom in a little bit, because we're only really dealing with, pretty much today we're only going to be dealing with the initialize page, which is where the $S array is, where we store the sections basically, and the main array, which is where we look into the S array and the code does whatever it needs to do based on what numbers it finds there. So let's zoom in a little, and we'll go to main to start with. So you probably remember that the way most of the code here works is a series of ifs, or an if and then a lot of else ifs. So, and they're based on the contents of $S, $A, 1. $S being the array which has the main sort of game data in it, S for sections, I suppose. $A is the current section where you're at, which is why it's $A, and then 1 is just a slot. Each each section is itself an array. The $S, $A0 is whatever text needs to be displayed, or the message that there's no text, or the message that the passage is unwritten. And then usually the rest of the numbers, $A1, $A2, 3, 4, etc., are a series of numbers and sometimes strings of text. $A1 tells you what sort of section it is, and what I mean by that is it tells you whether it's one where the game ends, it's one where there's a random branching, it's one where you have to test your luck, it's one where the player has a choice, and so on and so on. And what the rest of the what the rest of the slots mean depends on this number. So the first thing we have to do is find out what $S, $A1 is, and then have code for each possibility. So we've already done quite a few of these. We've done if it equals 0, that's a loss. You have lost the game. If it's 1, it just goes to a new section. If it's 2, that's a player choice. Obviously, that's a very important and a very common one in a choose-your-own-adventure style game. You have to give the player as many choices as possible. Then we have $3. Now, we have done this, but I've changed it. And then everything after this is new. So 4 is testing your luck. 5 is rolling against respect, which is the sort of new stat. It's a measurement of how the hunter-gatherers think of you. So therefore, it's only useful in... It's possible that you won't ever use it, but if you meet the hunter-gatherers, that will be part of the game. And because that's the bit that I've been doing, that's the bit that I've had the most ideas about. Obviously, there's been a couple of cases where that's relevant. Number 6 is a continue button, so it's very similar to It's very similar to 1, which is just proceeding to a new section. This one proceeds to a new section, but first it gives you a button that says click to continue. And the reason for that is to break up what would otherwise be long bits of text. And if it's an important transition from one scene to another, sometimes it sort of felt to me like it would be more impactful to have a continue button before you get to the next bit, to sort of emphasize that, you know, what you're reading. And then 7 is rolling against stamina. There's no particular order in this. I've just added a new type of section when I realised, this section needs to be something that I haven't yet done. And I think that's it. Oh, no. 8 is testing your skill, so it's rolling against skill. Oh, no, sorry, there's one more. Okay, yeah, that's right. And finally, or the final one that I've done, it certainly won't be the final one that I will do, because apart from anything else, we haven't done any combat sections yet. Number 9 is just a die roll. So there's no stats. It's just you roll the die, and where you go depends on the result of that die roll. So let's go through these one at a time. So H is the hunter-gatherer's respect for you, and I had a section where it sets that value to whatever the number is in the in that section's array, obviously depending on your choices, and that number can then go up or down. And what I could have done is I could have had one type of paragraph that's assign a value to H, and one type of paragraph that is, sorry, I'm going to keep saying paragraph. They're not really paragraphs. Sometimes they're paragraphs, but sometimes they're multi-paragraph sections, but I just think of them as paragraphs. So I'm sorry if I do keep saying that, even though I try not to. I could have had a separate type of section, which is change the value of H, but I decided to do them both in one bit of code. And here's how that works. If $S $A1 equals 3, then it says here, assign a value to H if it doesn't have one, or change its value if it does. So it just says if H, which just means if $H has been given a value that isn't undefined, which is the value that every attribute is, every variable is assumed to have if you don't sort of say otherwise. If $H, then we set H plus equals $S $A2, which means we set it to its current value plus whatever number is in this slot. So it could be a positive number, or it could be a negative number. Else, set H equals $S A2. So in other words, if H is undefined, then set it to the value that is in this slot. And if H is defined, add that number to the current value. And then after that, include main. In other words, this is main, so go back to effectively go back to the top of the page and proceed with this new value of A, which is the variable that tells you which section you're looking at. So let's have a look at an example. I'll try and give you an example of both setting it to a value and changing it. So there's this section here where you're taken to the village, you see the pit, there's an argument, they're arguing about whether you have to fight or not, basically, and one of your options is jump in the pit to show that you're willing to fight, and that takes you to 1C, or you can just wait and go to 1D. If you go to 1C, then we have this 3, and then a 3, then 1E, and because H won't have a value at 1C, that will be interpreted as give $H a value of 3. And similarly, and then go to 1E. And similarly, if you just wait, it will give $H a value of 1. In other words, they respect you more if you jump in the pit and sort of indicate to them, yes, I am a person, I am not an animal or a child, and I'm willing to sort of undergo this sort of initiation or test or something. And a later version where it changes, you might have the option of you're trying to follow some of the people that are going out looking for food. And because they're sort of much bigger than you, it may be that one of them kneels down and says, "Oh, you get on my shoulder." But if you insist on walking, which takes you to 1M, and if you are successful in your roll against stamina, which is another type of roll that we'll look at later, you get the message that the hunter-gatherers seem surprised that you are able to keep up with them, and then we have 3, 2, 1N, which in this case, because H will already have a value, it will interpret that as add 2 to the respect stat or sort of essentially attribute. Increase it by 2, and then go to 1N. All right, so let's continue. A lot of these have, there are 3 of these that are very similar. There's testing your luck, testing your skill, and testing your stamina. But I'll go through all of them, but they are basically the same procedure. You roll 2 dice. If it's luck or stamina, you roll 2 dice, and if the total is less than or equal to your current score, you're successful. And if it's over your current score, then you're unsuccessful. The only differences are which attribute you look at, and if it's luck, you have to decrease your luck by 1, whether you're successful or not, whereas you don't do that with your skill. And if you're rolling against stamina, you roll 4 dice, not 2. But I do have a separate section for each one. I probably could have had a single section and then had one of the numbers sort of say which attribute we were dealing with and sort of have a single page of code with sort of variants based on which attribute it was. But I did it the sort of lazy and the lazy way that takes up more code, I guess. So testing your luck. Now we've already talked about how testing your luck works because we dealt with that when we were dealing with a combat, because you can test your luck in combat. But this is when you're sort of made to test your luck during the main course of the adventure. So I won't go through how that works. It just sends you to that existing page. And then we print RL, which is the text that is generated on the page, which has what it tells you that you're testing your luck. It gives you the images of the die rolls, and it tells you whether you were lucky or unlucky. And then what happens is depends on whether L is 1 or not, and if it's not, it will always be 0. This page, test luck, will give L a value of 1 if you are lucky, in other words, if your roll succeeds, and it will give L a value of 0 if not. And then if L equals 1, we set A equals $S A2, and if L is 0, or in any other circumstance, but that will always be that L is 0, we set A equal to S A3. In other words, in the sections where you test your luck, it will then list the section to go to if you're lucky, and then the section to go to if you're unlucky. So, as an example, let's have a look. And I've also, I should say at the end of the S array, I've got all of the different section types, a little explanation of what everything is down here. So let's have an example of testing your luck. We need a 4. There's an example of changing the value of H, which is negative. If we don't need to do anything different in the code, we just have a negative number as the change that is made to H. So let's find this. There we go. Here's an example, fairly straightforward. No text, 4, which means test your luck. If the player is lucky, go to 1G, and if they're unlucky, go to 1H. That format, we're going to do the same format when we're testing our skill and testing our stamina. We have the success paragraph and the failure paragraph. All right, so let's keep going through this. So test luck, we've done. 5 is rolling against respect. It's very similar, except you only do a single die. And it works very similarly to how the test luck page works, but I will go through it. We set Z equals random 1 to 6. That's obviously the die roll. We have one of these big strings of text, which we're going to add to here. If Z is less than or equal to H, then we tell them it's a success, and we change the paragraph to $S $A2. And if otherwise, which means the roll is over their respect for you, then we add the phrase failure, or the word failure, to this $Y string. We change the paragraph to a different one, the failure paragraph. Again, we've got the success paragraph in slot 2 and the failure paragraph in slot 3, or section. Then we add /B to get rid of the bold, and a couple of line breaks. Oh, sorry, we don't add it to Y. We print Y plus /bold, line break, line break. So it will print something like this. And then we include main, of course, which is normally what happens. We loop around and keep going. So it will give us something like this. B, rolling against respect. Let's say we rolled a 4. We'd have 4d.png. So this command here is just a command that says we're looking for an image. We look in the art folder, and in the art folder we look for 4d.png, and that is just a picture of a die face showing 4 dots, and the face of a normal, normal 6-sided die, which is the only type that Fighting Fantasy uses, and it's showing 4 dots. And we just print that to show them what they've rolled. And then we have a couple of line breaks, and then we have success or failure, and then we have that slash bold and a couple of line breaks. So it'll print something like that. So if SA1 is 6, then we have a continue button. This is very straightforward. Again, we will print a row of text, and I'll give you an example. It'll be button. It's always button continue main, so it's always a button where the text is continue and the page we're going to is main, i.e. we're going to this page again. And when we press the button, when the player presses the button, we will set A equal to whatever's in $A2. So it might be 1E or 2F or whatever it might be. So that will simply have a button and the player will eventually press it. Pressing it will set the current section to whatever is in slot 2 of that particular part of the array, and it will sort of reload the page main, and we'll continue from there. All right. If SA1 equals 7, it's rolling against stamina. This is very, very, very similar to rolling against respect, except there's 4 dice instead of 1. And so this this display of the images, there's 4 images for each of the, one for each of the dice instead of a single one. I noticed that I put line breaks in this one. I put line breaks here, which is probably a mistake. So I'll probably get rid of that at some stage, because I want that to look the same. I want all of these rolls against a different stat to look the same. It sort of seems to me that it looks a bit more professional if they have a standard sort of formatting. So yeah, that was just a mistake on my part, I guess. And again, it's exactly the same if the total of those 4 dice is less than or equal to $AT21, that is to say our current stamina, 2 meaning that we're dealing with the second attribute, which is stamina, and 1 meaning that we're dealing with the current value, not the initial value, the maximum value, then that's a success. And we go to SA2, and otherwise it's a failure, and we go to SA3. So we have that format again of slot 2 has the success paragraph, slot 3 has the failure paragraph. 8 is testing skill, very similar again, except it's 2 dice instead of 1 or 4. We have the images. We have success sends us to slot 2 and failure sends us to slot 3. And finally, we have number 9, which is a die roll. It's just a random die roll. Our attributes don't matter. It's just an event. Roll to see what happens. And we set Z equal to random 1 to 6. And then we print that we've rolled a die. We give the image, so 3D, 4D, 5D, 6D, 1D, whatever it is, .png in the art folder. We set A equal to S, A, Z plus 1. So in other words, if we roll a 1, we go to slot 2. If we roll a 2, we go to slot 3. We roll a 3, we go to slot 4, and so on. And there's only one example of this so far, I think, but I will show you that one because the format is slightly different. And here it is. So we have the text, you help watch the children. We have 9 telling us it's a die roll, and then we have the 6 destinations in slot, because remember the first slot is slot 0, not slot 1. And then slot 1 is telling us it's a die roll. So the first slot is slot 2. That's why it's Z plus 1. We roll a 1, we go to slot 2. We roll a 2, we go to slot 3, and so on. And we can sort of, in this particular case, you can see that some of the results, 4 of the results are the same. We go to 1Y, 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 1Z, or 1AA. So there's a 4 out of 6 chance that we go to 1Y, and then only a 1 in 6 chance of 1Z and 1AA. So we can have 6 different events if we wanted to, or we could just have 3, and each of them have 2 results. Or we could do like this, where there's one result that's sort of the most common one, and then there's a couple of unusual results. And this is when you're watching the children, and basically the 1Y result is nothing much really happens, and then 1Z is one of the, I can't remember which one's which, but one of these two is one of the kids gets lost, or perhaps I haven't even decided which one's which yet. No, I haven't decided. But one of these will be that one of the children gets lost, and another one will be that there's like an animal prowling around the camp, which you can try to see off if you are feeling brave. And similarly, if one of the kids is lost, you can sort of help look for them, and obviously that might affect their respect for you. So those are the types of branching that I've added. As you can see, they even though I'm trying to keep it simple, they do tend to increase. There tends to be a lot of different types of mechanic, each of which needs its own code. Hopefully that'll get less as the game goes on, because I'll be finding situations which I can resolve using existing mechanics. So like I'll obviously be using testing your luck again and testing your skill again, and once I write code for combat, well, obviously I'll be using that multiple times. So the number of new ones will sort of tend to decrease, but it does tend to creep up as you add ideas. But that's fine. That's just the nature of these games. You do tend to think of different ways to. You think of them as simple. If you play them, you think, well, there's only going to be a few, but no, they're actually there's more sort of types of mechanic than you would think. And so when you go to program them, you sort of realize how many there are in the average game book. But anyway, that's what I have done. I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.